Okay, this is the Galactic Shaman Astrologers. We are going to speak about the eclipse that just happened on Friday, June 5th. And we're also going to speak just very briefly about the fact that there are two other eclipses coming quite soon. And actually, anyone who is on this call who also wants to voice record, that is fine with me, like from your iPhone or anything, because Holly, Emmeline, and I, and others who are just listening are experiencing like thunder and lightning, and we're in major storms. And I would say that that is likely the result of some of the energies that passed through yesterday. Zeus, who is Jupiter, is now the south node, and he's throwing some thunderbolts. It's pretty intense. We know that a lightning bolt hit the Washington Monument last night, I think at 7:12 p.m. And that rain came straight up here to Holly and I, who are in the northeast of the United States. So please also read the blog where I give like real clear explanation for the asteroids that were in this eclipse. And we might touch upon those today. I'm going to backtrack to our last video where we were startlingly accurate with the fact that the riot stickers were being promoted all over, and I saw them on people's kind of social media as their page, and it said, Riot 2020, Eat the Rich. It was pretty intense, and then we saw the trickster energy come in with many, many planets in Gemini. We ourselves were, experiencing a little bit of trickster energy on the call. And trickster energy also came through with this change between Cancer and Capricorn to the Gemini node when the twin towers fell. So I kept saying there's going to be something about twins when this trickster energy comes through. And sure enough, we had major trickster energy come through in the Twin Cities. So one thing that I want to talk about again that I've been speaking about for quite some time now is that we have all been everything. And I've also explained in my blogs recently that if we chose and we contracted to be a prostitute, we would be a prostitute. If we chose and we contracted to be a multi-billionaire with Lucifer conjunct the Ascendant and act out those energies, we would do that. If we chose to be a horse in this lifetime, we can do that. Like the Buddhists understand, you can be an ant, you can be a tiger, you can be a horse. You have been everything, so that just because I'm appearing in a human form right now, that doesn't mean that I wasn't once a horse. In fact, I've often been a horse. And my horse, Dulcie, has often been a human. And I think Emmeline knows my horses, and they're very sentient and conscious. Now, if my horse, and now I'm going to be very slanted without saying things directly because I'm going to use the trickster energy. Get ready, okay, because I can't behave. You know I can't. If my horse chose to die due to police brutality in the streets of New York City, she will. And that will be in her chart. She could also choose to be a trickster and not die. And the people that I know in Minnesota who live within a mile of that downtown area were reporting to me immediately that this was trickster energy, that there were cars driving around without license plates, that there were a lot of black op helicopters before the event even happened, and that most of the demonstrators are not from Minnesota, and that one of the police officers who was involved had only been on the force for 4 days. So there's something else I want to point out. When trickster energy is happening, it doesn't mean that everything is a conspiracy. And we listened to a video by Chris Brennan and Austin Kopak and another astrologer about the Jupiter-Pluto energy around like really a lot of conspiracy theory feeding the fears. We have to be very careful right now about polarizing, because the more that we polarize, pretty soon Mars is going to go into Aries. And like Austin Kopach said, we're going to have like gasoline being dumped on everything. So if you think that there's riots now, when Mars goes into Aries, particularly when it's going back and forth across Eris and square to Pluto, and Wuhan retrogrades back to that enclosure between Jupiter and Pluto, which it's going to do, we're not only going to have riots, we're going to have gasoline on everything. So be careful where you're putting your gasoline right now and in what engine you are putting that, which is something that is a direct quote from Austin Kopach. So that is a really heck of a statement for me to make right there. And I'm sure that everybody understands what I'm actually saying. So now let's look at the eclipses. The the lunar eclipse that just happened was at 15 degrees Sagittarius, which is the great attractor. And the great attractor sucks energy. So the great attractor is an enormous magnetic black void in the center of our galaxy. And it sucks up other galaxies. It brings everything back to what I would say is like the divine feminine, the voidal energy that is highly magnetic, the nothingness that we all came from, and the nothingness that we will all go to. When that eclipse begins at the great attractor, I think that we're all feeling a certain amount of, wow, this is nothing what I expected, and where is this going, and how can we define it? And yet there's nothing that can explain it. So it really feels almost like a certain level of, how did we get here? Holy crap. Now, America asteroid is at that position where the eclipse happened, and the asteroids always tell very particularly what archetypal space, place, time, name, or whatever it is going to affect. So we can see the effect in America. At the North Node in Gemini is an asteroid chaos that Emelina's been tracking, and it is within a 3-degree orb and applying, meaning coming closer to the North Node. Venus is retrograde. The Sun, the Moon, asteroid America are square to Mars, and Neptune, which is within a 5-degree orb of Pisces. Everything is like some bizarre illusion. We have no idea what the heck is going on. In addition to the fact that it's the same trickster energy that happened when the Twin Towers fell, okay? Mercury is square to Chiron in this chart. So we're all expressing the wound. Oh my gosh, the wound, the wound. The wound is so deep right now that I just got off a call with my clients who are living in the Cayman Islands right now. The man is from South Africa. The woman's from Canada. They can't get a flight out. There's nothing to eat, and there are no jobs on the Cayman Islands. There's not even any water because it's a big rock. He's from South Africa. He's being asked to have to go back to South Africa. She's Canadian. They're married. And I'm not going to give their names, but they're going to pull an illegal event for them both to get to northern Canada, okay? There is a lot of suffering happening right now. And because neither of them are from the Cayman Islands, the government there is saying that only residents who are citizens will be given jobs when jobs open up again. So they are there without food, water, or residency, And there's a lot of people, I have clients who are stuck in countries that they never expected to be stuck in. I had a woman from, and she was in Portugal, and I advised her, do permaculture, don't worry about your citizenship, grow food, make sure that you have first chakra shelter, food, warm socks, good hiking boots, and clean water, because that's what's coming, folks. When we're sucking this energy into the great attractor, I also feel like it's sucking civilization as we knew it. Like everything is going, folks, every bit. So I have clients also saying me, I can't believe the recording that you did for me in June. You were absolutely right. That was a year ago I did those recordings. And I say, people, go ahead and post them, because this is what I said. I mean, I said the civilization was going to fall. So I expect more trickster energy. I keep getting the download that the next place is France. So be aware. I'm not sure how it's going to come up, but Notre Dame, we saw burn. I do think that, you know, I'm going to just quote from astro.com that when Mars and Neptune are square to the sun and moon, there are discussions about the truth. There are a lot of errors in the so-called truth, and don't believe everything you hear and don't believe everything that you think either. Be very careful, folks, not to polarize on every issue, because this eclipse really is about the trickster energy and the south node being at that great attractor. It's going to suck everything that you ever thought into the great nothingness anyways. So be very careful about taking sides and polarizing. I also was informed, because I don't watch TV and I've never read or seen anything by Q. I don't even know who those people are. But I did hear that the White House was actually stormed by a mob last night. I don't even know if that's true, but we had Lucifer at the midheaven for this eclipse, just like Lucifer was at the node square to Chiron at the lunar eclipse on December 25th and 26th. So that Luciferian energy is a psychic phenomenon that is in the rage and the riot and the hatred of the people who would think to go and kill a president. Lucifer is not a person walking around like George Soros. Lucifer is in the being who chooses hatred as a path and would choose to kill somebody because of their political opinion or their self-righteousness. That is what Lucifer is. So we've got Lucifer marking the first eclipse, just like we had Lucifer marking the eclipse of December 25th and 26th. Lucifer is not out there. Lucifer is in here. And I took down our Shadow of God video from December because people said it was really scary. But it was a really straight video about what's going on out there. Is basically we're complicit and we are colluding with the Luciferian energy. And I think it's going to possibly show up again and again this year. Lucifer at 18 degrees in my chart for my location, which is the Northeast, is also traveling with Washingtonia, number 886. And I heard the most horrific thing that people really were focusing on trying to kill the president last night. I would say that that is absolutely Luciferian, no matter how you feel about him. Okay? So there's a lot to unpack here, and that is a very like hardcore, even polarized view from my perspective. But I want you to know that it's only going to get worse if people are promoting, protesting, and rioting, because there's trickster energy where this may not have even happened. And if it did happen, it was chosen. And I also wrote a very poignant sentence in my blog about how did I say it? It was something about the privilege of our victimhood. The privilege of our victimhood is something that needs to be looked at. Calling myself a victim and the privilege of that victimhood and choosing that lifetime after lifetime is from those Orion stars, which is where the Sun and Venus and chaos are currently sitting. So lifetime after lifetime, if you're choosing to be a victim, that's because the enemy's inside. Okay? Nobody did it to you, and I can prove that in every single chart I've ever looked at. People will say, you'll see in my chart, my mother did it to me. And I'll be like, yeah, but you chose your chart. you chose your mother. And yeah, of course I could see it in the chart because you did it to you. Okay. All right. I know it's really hard for everyone to get this perspective because you're not an astrologer reading charts every single day, but that is how it is, folks. Nobody ever did anything to anyone. That is super hard to get, but I would say that is the way we get back to the oneness, where Venus stopped before her retrograde and stationed at Al-Malam, returned to the oneness. So this is a very potent time where we as humanity are going to decide if we can return to this oneness, or are we going to continue to promote the rage and polarization? Because, you know, maybe people will come here soon because I'm a white privileged woman who can afford to grow her own food. Maybe people will riot here soon. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to feed them vegetables because probably their microbiome in their gut is such a disaster. They have nothing but rage in their body. Boy, I've got a lot to say, folks. So I better shut up now and see if my co-companions are brave enough to jump in here after me saying something like that. Go ahead, folks.
Yes, I am brave. I noticed an asteroid called Black. I was sharing in the group, and the asteroid Black is conjunct Mercury in Cancer, which would be squaring Chiron, exactly 8 degrees. So I mean, I saw that, and well, obviously this is the whole duality. And then I was feeling into the Cancer, so the mother, the igniting that feminine sensitivity and emotions. It feels like the kind of the bosom of this ancient mother, the bosom of this ancient source, this ancient origin, and then the communication of the siblings. So it's like, oh, but I'm hurt and you hurt me, and there's this whole kind of like family, as if the whole of humanity could be put down into like a 4-person family unit, and everyone is kind of just discussing and then violently attacking each other because it's like, I want to have my place in the arms of the mother. I really felt that feminine mother wound, because, and then Lucifer is in the house there too in Cancer, so it's like, and the burglar is in the house at the same time, and the children are vying for attention from their parents, and you know, who are their parents, and then the wound of, can I exist? Do I have the right to exist? Do I have the right as a child, as a sibling of you, to exist in union with you together on this planet? And how can we exist together? And like suckling at the breast of the mother, like we suckle from the same, we eat from the same earth, we're from the same soil, we receive the same storm. This is probably the same storm you guys had that we're getting now, watering my plants. So So I wonder when I was listening to Chris Brennan again, he did another video about the June forecast, and he was talking now about Mercury in its what will be the shadow and goes back and retrogrades back over where Mercury is at now. Are we going to go more into a retrospective phase even further still? It just feels like this is just the igniting. This is just, the Cancer is an igniting energy. This is just the beginning of the emotion and the floods of emotion. Because then, of course, then the sun is going to go into Cancer as well. So it's like, this is just preparing the way forward. So, yeah, and I looked up Nix, the asteroid Nix, personifying very similar to the Great Attractor, the void space, the dark night of the soul, going into that origin space, and that's holding, that letting go. And she is right before Pluto, where Pluto is retrograding. So it seems like really like all of the death phase of our structures are going into this dark night so that they can be completely transmuted. So there's like loads of mirrors of this great attractor just happening in lots of places, which is amazing. It's almost like an escape. It's kind of like, here's your opportunity, humanity, to go down this deep dark rabbit hole for healing and security and for the future of the earth. So it's like, do we have the courage to take that deep dive, which Venus is just applying an example for? Yeah.
Go ahead, Holly. Is your internet working good enough?
I think so. And the storm just passed and the sun came out, so everything looks bright again in my house. I've been a bit in my own little world this week, but a lot of this eclipse stuff and like the Venus retrograde transit and everything happens on my ascendant, descendant axis, and I have the opposite of the US Sibley chart, where the Sibley chart has the ascendant in Sagittarius and the descendant in Gemini. I have the ascendant in Gemini and my descendant in Sagittarius. So I guess, here I am in the micro experience of the kind of the Sagittarius is the macro experience in some ways, or just the collective United States experience. And I've just been really just doing my own thing. And I feel like this cyclone of stuff around me. And yet I've just had a lot of peace in doing my own thing. And interesting, because I think that one of the charts that Emily put up had Nemesis in the square with the Mars with this lunar eclipse. And Nemesis is a chart that's very close to my ascendant. And for me, I experienced that energy as a very kind of balanced, objective looking at things. And in mythology, she brought about a consequence that was fair and balanced, although oftentimes as it evolved, it became focused on like the retribution of bad acts. A bad act would get an equally bad retribution. So she became known as a goddess of retribution, although in the earlier forms of Nemesis, she's about equal getting back what you put in. And so what kind of like my experience this week has just been very actually keeping my own center as all of this stuff has been going over my ascendant points, and observing people in the kind of a chaos reactive mode and kind of just doing my own thing. And I thought about how like I'm a fragment of this great big collective energy cyclone. and that it's my choice on how I react to it, and I can get caught up in the cyclone, or I can just kind of keep my balance and do my thing in my little small town New England home. And I had a bunch of challenges came up. I lost my water, and I had to get help to get my water back on. And I got family to help me, and it worked out. And instead of going into crisis mode, I just took sensible action. Like the water went out. I had to make sure I had enough water for my animals. I was able to go to the store and get water until I could get it fixed the next day. You know, at work, some other crisis happened. I just did small steps. And one of the myths that I was thinking about was the myth of Psyche, and how she is married to Eros, but she can't know who he is. And she sees him, and then he flies off because that was part of the agreement. Like, you can't know who I am. And in order to kind of get her husband back, this kind of the god of like romantic love, she's put to the test by her mother-in-law, who's Venus. She's kind of probably the arch mother-in-law, right? Who says, okay, you need to do these really, incredible tasks of, to prove that you can basically be worthy of Eros and get him back. And so Psyche does, like, you know, she has to sort like this huge pile of seeds. Well, she can't really do it, but she gets help from her friends, and the animal friends come and help her, and the ants sort things out. And there was some other thing, and she even has to do a descent into the underworld and see Persephone to get some of Persephone's magic, basically. And I was like, you know, this is like really this time for me where I'm realizing, like, yes, in my life I have all these like really hard things to do at times, but I don't have to do them all on my own. I can, you know, find friends. I can make alliances. And this is a lot of, you know, one of those lessons I realized of Venus is learning to make those connections, especially Venus in Gemini, learning to make those connections to help you through crisis. Because Psyche is in this great kind of crisis, like Inanna, you know, she loses her great love. And in fact, I think in the story, most of them, she's pregnant. So she's, you know, maybe having this fate of being a single mother without her true love. But, you know, there is hope, but she has to get through it all. So that is a lot of what is coming up for me. And it's interesting, though, I was just playing to look at those asteroids that Emily, and not only is Black conjunct to Mercury, but also an asteroid named White.
Mm-hmm.
They are exactly, Black and White are right there at Mercury.
Wow.
I can give you the number. Yeah, and in fact, that is right about where another asteroid that I have, it's called, in my chart, they're hitting right at a point called another asteroid that people talk about a lot called Nessus, which is this like very rapey, angry, hateful centaur who tries to rape an Amazon called Dejanira, who is kind of like a victim archetype. And but this Mercury conjunct Black and White is like right at that same point in my chart. And this is my second house of work, and so I'm like seeing, I think, at least especially through my work, where I work in a doctor's office, I am seeing the Black and the White of it all. And the you know, I've had communicated with some very angry patients because of various things. Also very thankful patients who X, Y, and Z problems, the whole gamut. And so it's really interesting that communication is coming through. Someone thought I was too focused on work, not empathetic enough. Someone, you know, telling me what the exact opposite. Oh, you've been so helpful. I'm so thankful I talked to you today. Yeah, the whole range of it, the Black and the White all together. Let's see. Try to get you those numbers. Asteroid White is 10730. Asteroid black is 11207.
Say the black 11217.
11207.
Okay.
White is 10730. Nasus is zero. It looks like 7066. And interestingly enough, it is right there in between Ceres and Mars and Pisces right now.
Wow.
Yep. The asteroid White House, I thought I'd look that one up. It's in Virgo right now, opposite to the White House in Pisces. And I think we were talking a little bit about the Sibley chart with the Sagittarius ascendant, which puts Pisces, with the Sibley chart being the United States, the most frequently used chart for the United States. So with the Sagittarius ascendant, the foundation house, the fourth house of home family is Pisces, which is to me always been like the American dream. And they natally has Ceres there, which is that a promise of a better life, of abundance. And right now we have, and the White House is there. The White House is still kind of the icon of, we want to create this American dream, but we have Mars there, which is this kind of, warlike, angry, upset, and sometimes even severing energy. And Neptune is there, which is like also the illusions. And although sometimes it can be that, romantic and mystical part of energy of Pisces, and it can amplify that, it can also kind of like amplify the disillusionment and fakeness almost, and everything's being put in the media and it's not true. And so it's like this very foundation in this chart is becoming a swirling mass of what's real and what's not, and is that American dream still accessible for people? Is it still pertinent? Yeah, so that's been a lot of what I've been thinking about. I don't know if anyone else wants to pick up on their experience, but.
Yeah, well, this eclipse was so profoundly matching the United States, what I call natal chart at 5:10 on July 4th of 1776 in Philadelphia, PA, is what I use for that chart.
Yeah, me too.
That it's so profoundly like has the asteroids of, and is the it was Holly who pointed out. I mean, I knew, but she really pointed out that it's the sun and the moon are at the ascendant, descendant, like ascendant is the very life breath, okay, of a chart. And to have the eclipse at the life breath, if this was a person, I would say, well, you're definitely going to go through a massive transformation over the next 6 months, because the eclipse is like a portal of the shadow that you need to integrate over the next 6 months, because it's a shadow that the earth is casting over the moon. So the shadow that America has is going to need to be integrated. And then what I would say, that Holly and Emmeline are pointing out, that Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, which Fleur, said is kind of the script writer here, is writing the script of black and white, and Nessus, or Nessus, however is Holly, is like the rapist of both the black and the white, and that it's not necessarily black and white, and yet we expect it to be a black issue and a white issue. It's not. It's square to Chiron, as Emmeline said, is like, do I even have the right to exist? Can I be held in the bosom of the mother no matter what? Because as soon as you polarize along racial lines, everybody starts to feel like they don't have the right to exist. Everyone starts to question, and the rich people who, the riot stickers that say eat the rich, I can assure you that the rich people have not done anything but what they contracted for, and it is not necessarily their fault that they are billionaires. I just have to say that, folks. And it is not my fault that I'm a white woman, and it is not my horse's fault that she's a horse. And yet we chose these incarnations to work out all of these seemingly like we're separate and something's happened to him, happening to me, and I'm a victim. But it's not quite that black and white. Okay, it's a really confusing situation with Mars and Neptune conjoining, and they are actually going to come together on June 13th, which might make it so darn confusing that we all start to feel absolutely and utterly helpless, like this couple that I was talking to this morning, the man from South Africa, the woman from Canada. They're married and they yet can't go to a country together. It's going to potentially get that confusing. It's not going to matter what the color of your skin is. So it's a really good idea to stop polarizing. Persephone is traveling through that Pisces energy where everything is presenting as some kind of a mirage of the horror that we need to look at right now, because Pluto is still increasing the fears with Jupiter, Jupiter being the ruler of the South Node here. Jupiter is being drained of every bit of like that American dream that ever was, as far as I'm concerned, right? You know, Holly and I are up here in the Northeast where we're growing food and you know, living off the land. But I would say the vast majority of Americans right now are going, holy crap, am I even going to make it through the year? So what I want to talk about a little bit is, like, we're very astrological. I want to give kind of some nuts and bolts about how to make it. And Chris Brennan said something really profound. He basically also said this is an end of an era, okay? And as I've said, you know, civilizations rise and fall. We're definitely at the limits of power. This is an end of an era. And according to these other fabulous astrologers, because I'm going to just use them to support me, because I have been saying this for over a year now, things are going to get tougher. And people who are looking to go back to work, there's going to be all kinds of like preferences on who's allowed to go back to work, which is going to be very scary. Okay. I would say that get as close and as solid to the land as you can. There is no normal coming back. Okay. It's not going to be normal again. If the virus wasn't enough to ruin civilization, now we've got people burning down all the local grocery stores. Okay. And my mom, who's a senior citizen, just needs to get some water. Okay. And my elder clients just need to know that they're going to have some Brussels sprouts or they're going to die of constipation. So everybody's privilege and the victimhood right now, and your choice to polarize, is really concerning to me. Because when Mars moves into Aries, it's going to be there for 6 months, going back and forth over the wound, Chiron, Eris, the goddess of discord, Black Moon Lilith, which is another one of those, you know, back into the womb of Cosmic Mother. We're all going, and we might annihilate ourselves on the way there, and it's going to square Pluto 3 times. For all the people who are into the conspiracy theory of, what happened to the virus? Well, Wuhan is just simply ahead of Saturn right now, but it is going to retrograde back with Saturn to 29 degrees Capricorn by July 11th. They will be exactly conjunct by July 11th. And then Wuhan will scoot right back there, just about flu season. You know, just about when respiratory illnesses start coming up, September, October. So for folks who are saying, oh, you know, whomever is going to release another virus at that time, well, Wuhan is just going to travel back. So it's in the stars. I would get, here's Zeus thundering at my house. Zeus is pissed. Zeus is really pissed because the gluttony is over. Large scale consumerism is over. And I would say that Sagittarius on the South Node is like our ability to travel, adventure, hop on an airplane, all those Sagittarian type of like, you know, travel and study, yoga in another country is over. It's over. And people get really freaked out about like, what do you mean it's over? Sagittarius on the South Node is going to be like, okay, all that wild horses running free and getting on a plane and hopping about countries, I would say realize that that's over. So if you have a chance in the next few weeks to take a flight back to your home country, take it. I'm like nuts and bolts, folks. It's gonna get real now with Mars going Mars going into Aries and Mercury's gonna retrograde. The only thing that will be direct is Mars. Do you hear me? The only thing that's gonna be direct is gasoline pouring on everybody's inner polarization. Okay? The only thing that's gonna be direct is Mars in its own sign. Like, oh my gosh, people. Okay, so get ready for this kind of stuff coming up. It's in the stars. And then I'm going to open it back up to what people want to say, but I want to say that the solar eclipse, which is going to be on the solstice, June 21st, is at 21 Cancer, where the United States natal Mercury is. So I do still expect potentially the grid to go down and communication to go down. And then July 4th, 5th, the next eclipse is a lunar eclipse at 13 Cancer, which is where the United States sun is. So this is definitely going to be hitting here really hard in the United States first, which I would say is where all of the crystals are hidden in Arkansas from Atlantis. So all of those Atlantean type of turmoil from when Atlantis fell is potentially going to be happening here in the United States. And when Atlantis fell, it was very much like explosions. So I also am very concerned about nuclear explosions if the grid goes down still. So that's how I've been advising my clients. Let's hear from other people about what advice also would you give to people given these 3 eclipses coming? Or anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think I wasn't sure if Holly was going to speak. When you mentioned Atlanta, the something I've been really like on the subconscious space, something I've been journeying with for a few years, more consciously, you could say, I guess, is the wounds that we have from that whole Atlantis Lemuria collision thing, but that is just so present now. And again, that's polarity, isn't it? Like Lemuria, Atlantis. So I think I'm just really, how can we be really present and allow these emotions to come up, to be released? How can we do things that allow ourselves to be, because we can do all of the things we used to do. I think there's kind of a panic of like, how can we still do these things? Like if we need to go and travel somewhere to do a yoga event, or we need to go and, all of these, or we need to go and buy a thing. But how can we be resourceful to find ways to do everything we need right here, right now in the present? So that we know that we can really key into our abundance, and we know that we are the source of everything that we need through us, through the vortex of the cosmos, through us. And that will help us to rebirth and to recreate, because we have to come back into that space so that we can create the future. But we have to return and find our own ways of doing yoga. Like this online thing, we've been doing these online calls for years, so haven't we? So it works, but lots of other people are learning how to do online things now, and finding connect, whether it be online or whether it be however it is from a distance. It's, if not, then it's less of me go and be with people at a larger distance, so we could go with that, however that transpires long term. But yeah, it's very much processing those old traumas and letting them come through. And something else that's been on the horizon for me is nutrition. How can I, with Jupiter and gluttony, it's very much like there's an old kind of nerve in me that wants to kind of just consume it all away. How can I consume anything to kind of numb the pain that's coming up? And I think I'm just working with balance. How can we have space for processing the wound, but how can we also just allow ourselves those sensitive things that we need to kind of birth ourselves gently into the transition? So it's really like maternally caring for each other, for ourselves. Yeah. And then very much with the Mars energy, very much asserting the power that we have and being very present in whatever form that we can take, obviously from a place of unity and wholeness within. It's very much asserting that that I am posture in outward creative space from an internal meditative connection. So it's I think a really active time, and yet a very present, solidified time. Yeah. Over to you guys.
How do you want to say anything about what your recommendations are? Or anything?
Yeah, sure. I think because we still technically have a shelter in place in where I'm at, but it's loosening up, and but I live fairly close to my parents, and I had been in contact with them anyway because I had come to really investigate my own feelings, and I realized that the way I felt was if my family, if one of my parents who were in their 60s, if they were to get this, then I wanted to spend time with them now, so that I had that time right up until the end to be with my family. I did not want to be socially distanced from my family. And I spoke to my parents on how they felt about that. And they said, we feel the same way. We miss you. We don't want to not see you, and I think that this is the part where it becomes a little bit of a choice for everyone. What is best for yourself, balanced with what's best for the collective in terms of the the virus and ongoing sheltering in place. And I had been doing a lot of reading on the long-term effects of isolation and going into that very silent place on the physical body, which is very actually long-term detrimental for human beings to not be isolated from others. And right now, where a lot of this sheltering in place stuff is being lifted, I would say, use your best judgment, but, consider what is important for you. Like, I'm not going to tell anyone what's best for them or what's not best for them. I'm just saying that I made that consideration, and what's best for me is to keep in contact and keep connected with the people that I can, because I want to have those memories, and I want to have, I've been planting a garden with my dad. And he's been really helpful because I had some bad, like my dog ran through my seedlings, and, I had things happened to the stuff that I started, and he helped me restart, which is the other thing of that kind of material self-sufficiency that Lolita's talking about. And then other things that I thought about is, you know, if I were to get a disease, I'm not ever going to blame a family member for giving me corona or some other virus. I'm going to rejoice in the fact that I got time to spend with them in a loving time. You know, and it really came close because I was gardening with my dad, and I would never, if I was strictly adhering to the shelter in place rules, I wouldn't have been there when he had a blood sugar crash this week and had to sit down by himself next to the garden. And he said, okay, well, I'm okay. And I'm like, I know you're not okay. And he had some sugar in his pocket and some like candy and stuff. So I got him enough sugar so that he was okay. But it was infinitely safer because I was there. And if I had not been there because I was being a strict adherent to shelter in place, don't risk your elders, it would have been a lot more dangerous for my father because he would have been alone. And I think that sometimes out of fear, we are trying to protect. And I had a contemplation about being a mother and kind of like what Emmeline's talking about, that mother wound. And I was thinking about being a mother and having to just sometimes let your children go and have their experience no matter what it is. And we've talked a bit about asteroid Medea, who kind of sacrifices her children because she's afraid of the experience that they may have. And she wants to save them from the pain. And it kind of contemplated the distortion of that thought, of that, yes, that is a thought that is at some point coming from love, but it's also coming from fear. And a really deep, dark, loving place is letting your children just go like seeds in the wind and experience whatever that is their experience. In honoring with love whatever that experience is. And it was very scary to have my dad's blood sugar drop down into like, I don't know, the 30s probably. Because when we got home, it was only in the 60s when it should be up in the 90s. But I would never change, like not have that experience with that because I was there to help my dad.
Yeah, it's going to get really emotional like that, folks. It's going to, right now, you can feel it right now because Mars is within a 5-degree orb of Neptune and square to the sun. And it feels like this, like Mars can't really conduct itself that well in Pisces. It doesn't know which way to go. I always call it the drunken sailor. It doesn't know where to steer the ship, you know, in Pisces, and particularly conjoining Neptune. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so many weird illusions. I have no idea how to even obey the law anyways. I don't even think this damn mess works. I mean,
it's like Don Quixote on his horse tilting at windmills, like, because he thinks it's a monster.
Yeah. And I really, what Holly just said is very potent. The great attractor to me and Nyx and some of these other energies in the sky right now are like, we're all going back to nothing. And Ceres and Medea are still within a 1-degree orb, and they're in Pisces too, where I've said to my daughter, and I don't know if Emmeline released that video that she and I did together, but the kids are starting to commit suicide. They're starting to take their own lives. Because they're isolated at home and they've got some bad depression and anxiety, because they can feel, even up here in Vermont, my child can feel the rage and the riots. She can feel it. So today, you know, she's going to have 2 friends over and they're going to hang out, and they've been swimming and stuff like that, because at this point they're going to need to have the experience that they have. And I can't just keep hovering over her. You know, she's got to have some experience. So with Wuhan retrograding back, we're probably going to see the the increase in the virus, and certainly when it's enclosed by Jupiter and Pluto in October, it's going to be pretty significant. And that's what Dr. Zach Bush also says. You know, it's just when the leaves come off the trees and there's not as much absorption of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, flu and respiratory illnesses increase exponentially, and coronavirus is in that category. So it's in the stars, it's coming back. But what we're also talking about right now is we have this tiny little bit of time before Mars does go into Aries. And if you need to visit your parents, or you need to get to some other country where your family is, I do think that now's your window, because I do think all travel is going to be over again soon. And that has to do with the South Node being in Sagittarius, that free-loving wild horse that wants to run here and there is going to be restricted, and Jupiter's in a fall, and Jupiter is having a major fit, throwing thunderstorms and making this internet connection unstable, because Jupiter's age is over. It's the age of Saturn. Now we're going to move into, they're going to do this handshake on December 20th. Saturn is extremely restrictive, limited, taskmaster. And so all that we knew with the big out there gluttony of things is over. But like Emmeline was saying, then you figure out how resourceful you are yourself. You become a sovereign being. You figure out how to make your own food, your own fibers, your own candles, your own water, you know, carry your own water if need be. And I've been telling people to be that practical about it. I actually see, like, we're going to have irrigation systems and all of those kind of very Saturnian practical things. Make sure that you're near water, that you can get access to something to water your plants. As it's now in Vermont, we're hitting 90 degrees. Like, Vermont's never 90 degrees. Where it is so hot here, I have never seen anything like this. And Claude and I have been carrying water like we have never carried water before. So I think those Saturnian hard work, discipline yourself, is where we're going. And Saturn gives really great rewards if you're willing to be structured and well-disciplined. And that is where we're going. The United States Saturn, so in the Sibley chart, or what I call the US natal chart, was at the eclipse ascendant. So what that also says to me is the eclipse event ascendant was pointing to Saturn as the way. Okay? And maybe only astrologers can really understand this, but the eclipse event ascendant is at 15 degrees, okay, because the sun and the moon were at 15 degrees, so then the ascendant's at 15 degrees. And the Saturn of the United States is at 1448, so that's within minutes. So to me, and I could be wrong, always check my work. I always see the astrologers checking and make sure I know what I'm talking about. But if that is true, the eclipse ascendant is conjunct the United States natal Saturn, meaning that Saturn is now the way for the United States to move forward. More discipline, more perseverance, more hard work, more restrictions, more good agricultural practices. All of those things that Saturn rules is what this eclipse just said about the United States. And what everyone else should do, the way that you compare this to your own chart, which I did explain in Lalita Astrology Facebook page, is you look in your chart and say, where is 15 degrees Gemini, 15 degrees Sagittarius? If it's aspecting a point or a planet or square to your nodes, like it's square to my nodes, it just made a massive square in my chart. So basically Mars and Neptune are enclosing my north node, and Nemesis is on my south node. So the eclipse just happened squares my nodal axis, which means that I'm going to have to really get to work. Like I know that I'm here for a very big project that has to do with the changes that are happening with the United States. So my butt is getting kicked by this. I realize also, because I've got oracular vision, that it's likely that the government is going to be more and more challenged, and that we won't have any of the structures that we used to depend upon. And I may very quickly rise up as a teacher, as I have been for 20 years, of how to do agriculture and how to live off the land in a very disciplined way. So that's how you would look at it in your own chart. Look at 15 degrees, Gemini, 15 degrees, Sagittarius. Is it squaring your nodes? Is it conjoining a planet? And then you know what it is that will be kind of the change factor for you for the next 6 months. But then we got another eclipse. We got 2 more eclipses coming up. Boom, boom. So all of us are going to be in massive change. Go ahead, folks. What do you want to say about that?
I just want to clarify where I think, like, you and I are in the Northeast. So this most recent eclipse on June 5th, the ascendant for us in the Northeast was at about 15 degrees Libra, which is where the US Saturn is in the Sibley chart. But if you are outside of that area, the ascendant might be in a different place. Because I think for Emmeline, where she's in the UK, I think she had a Sagittarius ascendant. So I think for, like, in the UK, how that that eclipse chart looks has a different flow than it does for us here in the Northeast. And even on the West Coast, there might be a different, of the West Coast of the US, that is. Yeah. I know the UK has a West Coast. Yeah. The West Coast of the US would also have a different ascendant. So exactly the flavor of that eclipse would have some nuances to it based on the descendant.
And isn't that amazingly true too? Because I mean, Emmeline is not in the United States, so she may not experience what Holly and I are experiencing about this. But what Emmeline and people in her, latitude, longitude type of environment are going to experience the great attractor conjunct the moon. The ascendant looks like it's at 4 degrees Sagittarius for Emmeline. So a different energy, but a siphoning off, I would say, with the south node being there in Emmeline's event chart of the eclipse. I know I try to be as straight as possible for everyone to listen to these conversations. Emmeline, I would say that in England, that might mean that there's even going to be more restrictions, because Sagittarius is the south node that otherwise wants to, adventure and go down to Greece and then maybe take a trip to Bangladesh and then we'll go over to Thailand. And, I would say that the south node being in the first house for your location in England is even more restrictive on the Sagittarian, like gluttony.
Yes, I can feel that. Also, the vertex is at Lucifer. So the vertex is 19 degrees Cancer, trining Mars, Neptune. It's crazy.
So everyone's got to hear that again, Emmeline. So Lucifer is in the event chart, whether you're here in the Northeast or where Emmeline is. Lucifer's at the vertex. So Lucifer is appearing for everybody, within. If you've integrated your own like enemy inside, then you won't have to project it outside. But it's been really profoundly in the chart since last December, in virtually every major event chart that I've seen.
Yeah, with Lucifer, the vertex, it almost seems like with the constriction, there's this tendency it projects you to the only way out is through Lucifer. So how can I exert my energy? Oh, through Lucifer. And if you look at it in a backward way, in sort of a cathartic way, okay, so it's to come back and to integrate that again, to come back into myself and to see that again, mirroring again. So I guess, yeah. And then the midheaven is in Libra. So there's an air trine here with the into Gemini. There's a part of fortune. So there's like an abundance of air trining with Wuhan and Saturn. So there's like almost like an abundance of going into that discipline of retrograding into Wuhan. and being able to communicate that. And what does that mean for, because Juno is there, the midheaven, what does that mean for trade in the global community? Maybe it's going to affect trade, I don't know, or the way people relate to each other in union. Because what you were saying about your dad and, going to see people, it's really like what we've noticed is we had dinner with our neighbours the other night, and the amount of joy that we felt after going to have dinner with, they were the first people we'd had dinner with for months, and the amount that was like almost like was horrific to consider that we hadn't actually eaten with anyone else for that long, but we felt so good to get out of the kind of solid lines that had been built around what we should or shouldn't do. And that ease, it wasn't, it's that how to not be a rebel and to just kind of allow the flow of being able to go and see this person because it just feels really good and it's not doing any harm, and allowing to figure out where those lines blur. Because it's really important, I think, for the mental health of ourselves to be able to do that and to share with each other like butterflies, to share ideas with each other. So, just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I would say, given that Wuhan is still within a 3-degree orb of Saturn, be responsible. Be responsible. But until Wuhan actually comes back and conjoins Saturn in Capricorn, which I think is July 11th, and then gets all the way back to the enclosure between Jupiter and Pluto again on October 9th. Be responsible. Be aware that the virus is mutating. Also, it's a different version in China than it is in Italy, and that children are affected differently, and that their red blood cells are doing something called the Kawasaki syndrome, so that their red blood cells are forever affected. So some of my clients have chosen not to have summer camps for kids because they just don't know how they could keep the kids safe. And yet I'm choosing to let my daughter, be with her companions right now for her mental health. Is, it's getting to the point where, like Holly prevented the death of her father. So we all have to strike those balances right now. But once Mars comes into Aries, I would say do everything that you can to do putting the gasoline into the correct engine. Okay, this is incredibly important. There will be more trickster energy, I'm sure. Rather than spend a lot of time writing posts that are polarizing or reposting YouTube videos that are polarizing, get out there and grow the garden, carry the water, chop the wood, make your yard as beautiful and practical and responsible as possible. And for some of my clients who are like, you know, packing up and leaving California because it's getting really crazy there, I have also advised some of my clients to actually leave their location because it is just too dangerous. And I can see in their chart that it is going to be quite dangerous for them, given their solar return is going to set up a massive square with Mars and Pluto. So do what you can to get to those really natural earth resources, because Uranus, of where the real revolution is taking place, is in Taurus. Uranus is the planet of like brand new inventive ideas. How to flip the script and do the counterpose to everything that is currently happening. Look to Uranus. Uranus in Taurus, for me, in this location of the event chart of the eclipse, is at the vertex within 1 degree. So for me, I'm going, oh boy, yeah, I'm going to be planting. I got more fruit trees. We're putting in celery. We're, you know, planting things that we've never planted before. We're also exchanging plants with neighbors. Neighbors gave us some celery that they had too many seedlings for. So there's a wonderful exchange. Somebody pulled into my driveway the other day with a big load of wood chips because they saw that we have wood chip path everywhere. But we said, oh, no, give it to someone else. You know, over there, they're trying to make a garden. There's a wonderful exchange happening right now around that self-sufficiency. Uranus in Taurus is where the real revolution is happening. That's where the real revolution are, the people who are making food forests and permaculture and getting back to the land. Get your feet on the earth, put your hands in the soil, and study the bugs. One video I was trying to arrange, even though my internet is so sketchy, it's hard for me to make videos right now, but does everyone know that we're about 1% human DNA and 99% of us is actually microbiome? Like we're bugs. We're bugs. And I was going to make a video of my radishes, my spinach, my arugula, my collards, most of my cucumber, squash type of plants are being eaten by bugs. So they have little holes in them. This was my great attractor, you know, the great huge hole in the middle of the galaxy. I was going to make this video of, if you're eating plants that don't have holes in them, you probably shouldn't be eating them, because the bugs won't eat them. And if the bugs won't eat them and you're made of bugs, you're probably putting in some kind of like super hybridized, pesticide covered, Roundup ready item into your body. And according to Dr. Zach Bush, it's the Roundup ready regions where the new viruses will spring from, because they actually mutate things really fast, because they're, you know, they mutate plants so that plants can have pesticides and herbicides also, which is the killer of a plant, sprayed directly on the plant. So it's a major, Agent Orange is a DNA changer. Okay, my DNA is all messed up because my father was in Vietnam directly in Agent Orange. So my brother and I have bone issues and bone tumors and bone growths that are abnormal. Well, if there's one revolution that really needs to happen on the earth, it is the revolution back to the soil and the microbes and the little fungi and things that live in soil. So put your energy in that if you want to really create a revolution on the planet. That's where Uranus is for the next 6 years. That's where you will discover electricity. Okay, or like Benjamin Franklin when Uranus was discovered. So that would be the path, I would say, of the best possibility given that gasoline will be pouring for 6 months with Mars and Aries, put all of that energy into microbiome. And if your gut is healthy. Okay, let's hear from people. What do they want to say now?
One of my kind of like homesteading realizations that was kind of interesting is in order to like kind of do this, you know, I got some ducks, which have been working out really well, but I was also looking for some rabbits because rabbits are small and easy for kind of a single woman to handle. There is actually a rabbit virus that is happening in the western part of the United States, and it's killing a lot of rabbits here. And you know, so it's been actually made it kind of difficult to find rabbits to have my own little rabbit project to get rabbit manure for my garden, because my soil is here is it's becoming just like dust, and it's been very dry. And so I would say don't wait if you want to start your homesteading projects, because there's some very real, like, you know, things that could become greater obstacles in the future if they can't, one, contain this rabbit virus. And it's a hemorrhagic virus. It will affect the wild rabbits and domestic rabbits, and could really decimate rabbit numbers. The state of California actually is prohibiting any transport in and out of that state of the rabbits, because they have it there and they're trying to lock it down. And I think we are so focused on like this Wuhan thing that's affecting people, but there are other viruses that are like really affecting our agriculture, that if you are trying to start up and be self-sufficient, that you need to become aware of and understand kind of biosecurity on that level, because it will affect your ability in the future to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, that's so right on. With the planets in Orion, the ancient Egyptian and Arabic views of Orion stars were they were the stars of war, and they were the stars of like direful consequences to agriculture. So I wrote a blog about that 2 blogs back, and I reported in this group, even though it's very hard for me to say these things, but you know, the pregnant pigs were all incinerated in Colorado, such that my daughter said it smelled like bacon there, and the sky was black for days. And Greeley, Colorado processes, which means kills, okay, just so I don't make the word too nice, kills 20% of the world's pigs, right in this one location in Greeley, Colorado. So that and many other places are being shut down. So in addition to the viruses that the animals have right now and can contract the coronavirus, you know, all animals can contract the coronavirus. So it just mutates a little bit, like the flu. Every time you give a horse a flu shot, the horse excretes a mutated live virus of a potentially different flu than, and the same with humans. So these viruses mutate very quickly. And when you're adding Agent Orange, and virtually all of California is covered with Agent Orange. There's nothing organic coming out of California anymore, even if it says organic. The creatures are mutating viruses within them. In 2018, Holly and I experienced, you know, the death of hundreds of thousands and possibly millions of squirrels all over the Northeast. So it doesn't surprise me that during this Venus retrograde, we're having rabbits also have a terrible virus. And we really need to be aware that there are direful consequences to agriculture right now. All of us are going to need to produce food. I mean, if it isn't the locusts in Africa, it's just the fact that the soil itself is dead and creating more viruses because it's covered with a pesticide, Agent Orange, which isn't going to go away in our lifetime. Like, that's there forever, folks. Once it's in the soil, Agent Orange doesn't like, go away. It just like washes into more soil, into the waterways. So we've got a long-term consequence coming up. And I think we as humans, when Mars enters Aries, are going to start to feel that first chakra, will I even survive this? And if you're not looking to collaborate, if you're not looking to help one another and help your neighbor, I do think that we could have some serious delete of the human population events happening. Because when Mars crosses Black Moon Lilith, that is a delete button. Okay, that is a massive delete button. So we need to really choose as humanity to assist one another. And even if we are all going back to the great attractor, love one another while you can. I mean, we've also got to face the fact that we could all, 70 to 80% of the population could go, because we've got, just like the Black Plague and all those other viruses that we talked about a couple of sessions ago, Saturn is coming back to Pluto, folks. Saturn is going to come back with Wuhan. So be responsible, because as Demetra said, Athena is in Capricorn. So do what Athena is doing. In Capricorn, she's all about being super responsible. Capricorn is like, make sure that you have your backbone straight and your skeletal system on right and your bones in alignment, and go to the chiropractor. Make sure your structures are solid, your bones are good. Okay, boy, that was a lot. Anyone else want to jump in there?
I just wanted to like say one last ask about the structures. Is I think you already said it, to maybe not be so reliant on your government structures. I think it's kind of going to ebb and flow between really strong at times. This is what the rules are going to be, and then it's going to like collapse, and there'll be cycles of that. And know that they, there's been this talk of the security breach at the White House, and then I saw something else too in the UK, that maybe Buckingham Palace was evacuated or something, or I don't know, Emmeline, if you saw that, but I saw a quick little YouTube video that it looked like it had been shut down, and like some of the gates had been, like one of the big like coat of arms on the front gate had been taken off, and that may be 100% like YouTube nonsense, but it's not just the US government structures that are gonna have to shift and change, but it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And I feel that oscillation coming.
Yeah. Even though the US, which has the crystals from Atlantis in Arkansas, is going to face this potentially first. And because clearly the next three, well, the eclipse that happened, the next two eclipses are going to be very particular to the United States chart. I would say that civilization as a whole is going to fall. And so all of us in every country will need to become very personally responsible for your existence, not depend on your local co-op or your dollar store or where you ever got your stuff off of Amazon. I think that's all coming down too. Emmeline did mention briefly international trade and whether we could do long distance movement of goods. I know there was a huge oil spill, like 20 times bigger than any other oil spill in the Arctic this week. Now, that has got to stop, folks. That has got to stop. So we are all participating in that, use of oil and fracking and nuclear energy, and Earth will cause it to stop, because I do believe Earth is the ultimate mother that we're talking about here, with these planets going into Cancer and the next eclipses being and Cancer and Capricorn. We're talking about feminine earth Capricorn, watery earth Cancer, both of which are mother energies. So she's going to be fierce with us, I'm pretty sure. And we need to be responsible. We need to really start doing like 100 years ago, where you were responsible for the food and the clothes and the things very locally, and not this massive transport that requires tons of oil to get the ship across the sea and the airplane to give you some, or me, some cheap plastic goods, which are also made of petroleum. So we need to get very responsible. The Lucifer is not out there. The Lucifer's in here. And, you know, the people who are having tantrums right now, you know, that tantrum energy was spent about 2 months with domestic violence way up, because people were at home beating their own family members. Domestic violence was out of control. Even here in my little Vermont quadrant, it was in the newspaper, out of control. Well, so then as soon as people got to leave their house, they took, instead of beating their own family members and torturing their own, out there onto the streets. And don't tell me that that's not what happened. That's what happened. And the riot stickers of "Eat the Rich," I mean, if I was in Buckingham Palace, I would be concerned too, because you got riot stickers that say "Eat the Rich." I don't see where that is going to help anybody. So we really need to be careful how we polarize, with Mars being the planet that's in its own sign, with all the gasoline pouring into every turbocharge engine that there is. I'm talking about turbocharge, especially when it's square to Pluto. Okay, 1 more minute before 2 o'clock. Let's have any closing comments.
I just thought I'd say that my neighbor who we had dinner with works for BP, and he said that what happened is they actually had too much oil. They were paying people to take the oil. They didn't know where to put the oil. They literally, like, an oil spill like makes in some ways so much sense, because there's too much oil. They didn't have anywhere to put it. It's been a major problem. And also, I was just thinking that, you know, the UK are kind of, when I was looking back a long time ago at the conspiracy theories of America and the UK, it's kind of like, I've always seen the UK as like a hidden version, and then what's happening in the States is kind of a very overt, but it's always happening here at home, but it's like undercover. And so I always I'm like, if that's going on there, then it's going on here, but it's like, I didn't even know about Buckingham Palace. Like, that's not even, it's like kind of all hidden, hush hush, which is very British.
The British have to be polite about it.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, and I think a lot of people, I'm not a big fan of looking at living people's astrology charts, but a lot of the members of the royal family have ascendants in the late degrees of Capricorn. So that they may be very personally affected by the upcoming eclipses. And eclipses, historically back to Babylonian times, talk about changing of dynasties and changing of heads of state. And I'm not predicting anything is happening to the queen. That's not what I'm saying, but I do think that is something to think about, that they, with the changing of structures, and the British monarchy is a very traditional structure, that they may have retreated away from Buckingham Palace, which is in this, you know, I don't know if you're having riots or protests or anything in London, but they may have retreated to their country homes in Scotland or wherever they go.
Yeah. And then obviously the London being built on Rome, we live in a Roman town. It's this very like Roman energy, which, you know, we're talking, well, anyway, it's a long whole thing, but it's really up.
Yeah, so I guess we'll conclude with that Rome will fall. civilizations rise and fall. And to quote Chris Brennan, we have a tough era ahead. So choose wisely where you put your gasoline and what engine. Okay. I mean, Mars is so conjunct Neptune right now. I don't even know how to end this meeting. In Pisces. But we'll close for now. And maybe our next meeting will be about Mars and how to better integrate your inner Martian again. We've talked about that a little bit more, but I think that's going to be an important discussion. Okay, thank you all so much. And thanks to everyone who is willing to listen to our videos. Bye-bye.